I always look back on that time in my life, and at that time I was like sleeping on the floor on a mattress. I had sold my I was using this computer to write the programs that some people are buying now on a computer that was dumped in the dumpster. It didn't hold a charge. It hung loud. I was borrowing Wi-Fi through the walls of my neighbors so I could actually do something. I had tinfoil holding an antenna up so that I could get PBS for my kids. I was just broke as a joke.
So, Danette, I am so excited to have you on the show today. First of all, a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here to chat with you and to talk all things, health. I love it.
Yeah, me too. It's amazing. I guess the first place I want to start really is you've overcome so many struggles, right, in your life and created not just one incredible, like 8-figure business, but 3 in a very short space of time. And you're giving so much back to the world and everything that you do. You have a beautiful family, but it wasn't always that way. And I really want to kind of dive into some of the mindset stuff here. But also, if you could just kind of briefly introduce your story for people, I think that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, I always say that we have these opportunities, which are like gifts wrapped in sandpaper, or there are these rock bottom moments, which really help define your character and really help sometimes find your. And I feel like a lot of what I went through that felt really difficult. So just to share with those who are listening, I went through this phase in my life where I was this health coach, and talking with nutrition and doing and fitness. And I went through a rock bottom in that moment where I was basically living somewhat of a lie and not following my intuition when it came to my relationship I was in, just trying to shove that down because it's just easier not to face it. And then my son passed away. I had to go to the hospital right before he was born, was bleeding. And long story short, I came home without him. And I went into a really deep depression. And it was the space that I was unfamiliar with, of not leaving the house and not wanting to be here in this life. And it really, this rock bottom time and what I would call this gift wrapped in sandpaper really led me to what my purpose is. And it was around healing foods, deep healing foods, not just healthy foods that I thought were good to talk about as a trainer or nutritionist, but true healing foods that will shift depression and will shift the chemical makeup in your system so that you are performing at your level. And then it also got me into mindset. I can really shift this zip code of my thoughts and where I was going, because, we all know that when you hit rock bottom, you tend to hit a couple more. And I did. I went into financial ruin. I ended up getting divorced from my spouse, and it was really difficult period of time, which really stirred me up to create the true character of who I am today, and really led the mission and to the businesses that people see me as. Because I really knew that I needed to help myself first. Then I started seeing that my clients with the stuff that I was like learning through my down, I wanted to bring it to the masses. And that's really where the businesses were formed, was through my mess. And
such an incredible story. But I mean, what's so amazing is that any one of those, and I've similarly struggled with depression, but any one of those things, right, would bring so many people down. I mean, losing your son, just the most unimaginable pain, losing your relationship in that way, and then the financial ruin you experienced, any one of those. I guess the question I have in my mind, when you're bringing yourself up, part of depression, because my experience of it was there's so much self-loathing. And I know that you come from a real place of self-love and how important that is to be able to then sort of pour from a full cup rather than an empty cup. How did you overcome that? Because was the inner critic inside you kind of beating you up, or how did you get your head around it all?
Yeah, and I feel like there's a scale of depression. So I want to be in deep respect for people who are in that, whatever stage you are of depression, because not one all the same look alike. And, everyone has their own experience with it. But I do want to, that I feel that I'm hopeful that I can share some stuff that will help someone that's in any stage, right, of this depression. But, I always look back on that time in my life. And at that time, I was like sleeping on the floor on a mattress. I had sold my furniture. I was using this computer to write the programs that some people are buying now on a computer that was dumped in the dumpster. It didn't hold a charge. It hung out. I was borrowing Wi-Fi through the walls of my neighbors. So I could actually do something. I had tinfoil holding an antenna up so that I could get PBS for my kids. I was just broke as a joke. But I would say that, and I was alone. I'm this like young mom and like these young kids and just so downtrodden but the worst part was the negativity. I was in an onslaught of negativity going on in my head. Oh, Mom, you're a financial ruin. Your dreams are never going to happen. It just was nonstop. You're alone. You don't have any friends like you, because I was just like isolated. I had created that, which wasn't necessary, but I did. Kind of happens when you get into depression and self-loathing, you kind of isolate and no one really knows that you're going through it. So you have to find a way out. And honestly, it wasn't like a light bulb moment. It wasn't like, oh, I honestly, one day at a time, one step at a time. What I did have in my pocket at that time was I knew, because I was a trainer, that I had heard about movement, exercise helps depression. It's interesting to know that and then to feel it on a cellular level, because then I had to like actually try to move when you don't feel like moving. I had to write down all, because then I had heard that if you want to amount to anything, because then I started like studying people that the greats of the greats, the people that had passed on in this lifetime, like what made them so great. And one thing that I found out of all of them, like common denominator, all of them, is they all had a chaotic past. So I was like, awesome, I am in chaos. Like maybe there's some hope. And they all said, like, you have to change your mental zip code. It's not about a strategy of something or a connection with someone else. You've got to change your mental zip code. So that's why I've been on such a massive quest of radical self-love for myself, teaching radical self. I think it's the fundamental basis of manifesting. We talk about now manifesting abundance and having the house and the relationship, but I'm like, got to get to the fundamental. And that comes from discipline. That comes from, eating healing foods. That comes from exercising. And so I was writing down affirmations. I was moving my body. I was declaring the affirmations, especially when I didn't want to, when I was feeling really down on myself and the negativity was spiraling. I made a commitment. And that's how radical you have to be. You have to like step in the fire, step uncomfortable, step in the things you don't want to do, because you are in hope that those things you don't want to do will actually make a difference. And over time they will.
And they do, because effectively you're reprogramming your subconscious mind, right? But it's through that continuous spaced repetition.
Absolutely.
And what did you do in the moments where, you'd be caught unawares, you'd have negative thoughts? Would you then replace those as you went about your day with a positive affirmation immediately? Or kind of how did you sort of guard at the gate, if you like, of your mind?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a formula that I personally did. It was a kind of a comprehensive formula. One, I was making sure I was eating superfoods. So I went down to in cooking with 5 ingredients. So that was a formula for me, because I noticed that food was making a difference with my brain, my fuzziness, my tiredness. So I was radical. The second thing, and I was studying about it. I went into massive studying about brain fog, depression, superfoods, like natural stuff. And the second thing is I got rid of anything that was negative, any relationships, anybody on the phone, and actually that was the easiest, because I had kind of started to isolate. So I just want to say, if someone's like, I feel super isolated, like, that's better than being around a bunch of negative people. So just, remove yourself from anybody that's negative or toxic, because you've got to rally around yourself. You've got to be your biggest rescue. This isn't the time to be hanging around people that are negative or not into the things that you're stepping into, whether it's healing foods or affirmations, and they're like, oh, that stuff doesn't work. Move yourself, because you got to be your biggest hero at this point. The third thing I did is I sat down And I wrote down all the things I was feeling about myself, like you're a terrible mom, financial ruin, you're never going to live out your dreams, you're never going to have a lot of money, all the things, right, that were just kind of on loop. And they were the list of them. And then I wrote the opposite of those things. So I'm a wonderful mom. I'm a financial success. And I wrote them in the affirmative. I am, or I have, not I want, but I have, I am. And I made a commitment in that moment after, it's about a page and a half. And I folded it up and I said, anytime my brain goes onto a loop where I'm just kind of self-loathing, or I'm sad, or this story's coming up that may or may not be true, I may be broke as a joke, but I would pull out this sheet, and there were days that sometimes it was every 15 minutes, but I made that commitment. And then I also made the commitment to move my body. And when I would move my body, we all know that it's not at the beginning of the workout or before that you feel motivated, but when you get done, there's this flow of oxygen in your body and you're at a prime state to actually cue the subconscious. So I would actually say really positive words after when the endorphins were high. And I feel that since I was, which we know on a scientific level how this actually works, this is how I did it to create it quicker, was to move my body, get into that peaker state, and then to start declaring what I wanted for my life.
Interesting. Yeah. For me, the same. I found exercise was the thing, and that helped me transition off all meds and things like that. It's the key thing when people say to me, why do you exercise so much? For my mind. It's not actually for body composition. Huh?
I go, yeah, it's like my therapy.
Yeah, exactly. It's my therapy. And I went through a lot of therapists. Let's talk then about, so I guess I want to talk about the foods, but also when we're looking at like that routine that you were doing in the morning when you would wake up to prime your state. A lot of people have, and you probably have already developed one now. For me, meditation also has been quite a big thing. And I'm always playing with that thing of, do I meditate first? Do I exercise first? Like, what primes my state? And I was really curious what you found.
If I were to say at that stage when I was low, I wasn't meditating. Like I was exercising, which was my meditative state. If you do anything on a constant, it's running, biking, hiking, long walk, you do get into a repetitive meditative state. You don't have to sit and do this to be in a meditative state. So I want freedom. And swimming laps can be very meditative. You've got to find your groove. Maybe sitting is your groove, but the thing is getting outside and getting that repetitive state, or sitting, like you could, and do following your breath, which is also creating that. I wasn't that at the time. I also didn't have a morning routine. I want to be really real with people. I literally started with these other things to recreate my life because I didn't have all the tools. And honestly, I was a single mom. My daughter, I always say she could smell when I would wake up, because I would sneak out of my room at 4:30.
I've done this.
So quiet, and she knew. And so she would come down, want to sit in my lap. And as a new mom, just want to give permission to people that these things you see on social with everybody with the amazing morning routines. And you're like, oh my gosh, babies are all over me. How do they do that? You know, I was that. And I would literally like sit down and get her like a drink, get her a coloring book, and try to stay in it. But I wasn't doing deep meditation. I just wasn't until it was nap time or whatnot. So now that I'm in a new space, they're teenagers now, to go off your question, I personally, I mean, I think it doesn't really matter. Like, I think we get stuck into these ideas that it has to be this way for it to be 100% effective. What I feel though personally is when you are at a state of feeling good or a state of love, that's when you're primed for the deepest meditation, for the deepest manifesting, or in heart coherence. So for me, I like doing it after I move my body. But if I wake up and I'm in a state, then I may meditate. But the goal for me is to be in a good state to meditate. Personally, now that I'm going to another level, because it's easier to be in a good state now. I'm in a different place in my life. Some people need to meditate to get into the good state. Now I'm optimizing even that.
Yeah, amazing. And I think, as you say, it varies person to person, right? And where they are on their journey at this point.
Yeah.
And so what about, you talk about the kind of the unseen forces that are at play that you've got to kind of work with in terms of energy. It's something that I'm just fascinated by, the whole kind of law of vibration and attraction. Can you
Wow.
elaborate on that for people listening, and what you found has worked?
So are we going there?
Yeah,
because some
let's go
people
there.
take
Let's go all in.
conversations and they put them in like this woo woo. They're like, I'm learning as a businesswoman. I'm learning as someone who's optimizing now at a different level. Like I was in survival before, now I'm in optimization. That these forces were always at play, but now I'm really utilizing them consciously. So I really believe that everything is energy, everything from your thoughts to the physical things in your room to every human. And we hear this concept of you're connected to everyone and everything. I don't just say that, but I actually know that on a very deep cellular level. So if I'm connected to everything and everyone and everything I see, or it's a hologram within my thoughts, then I am connected to infinite possibility, infinite wisdom. Anyone that I look at that's the great of the greats, or anyone that I think is amazing, or this beautiful tree or this beautiful flower, that lives in me. And so does even the dark, but I choose to see the beautiful, the powerful, the wise, and I try to tap into that. So unseen forces to me is that means what we would call ancestors that have passed on, unseen forces. So every morning I do this thing called soul writing, and it is what I do attribute to the success of my relationship with my children, my spouse, to my businesses growing super fast at a really, quite quick rate for how long I've been in business, is because I'll sit down and I will have this intention. And I even did it with children by me in the earlier days, but I would say, what would you have me know? And I sit down with this intention that I'm connected to it all. And I light a candle, and it's just, I know it's the intention that I'm connecting to infinite wisdom. And I ask, what would you have me know? And I write what comes up. And business ideas have come up, things about my kids that they're like, how did you know? And this is where the deeper wisdom has come for me.
Which is so, I mean, it's so true, right? Because even when you think about it, when we talk about our thoughts, we say, the thought came to me, it occurred to me, right? It comes from somewhere. It's from universal intelligence. It's not, you didn't just create that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Did you, when you were going through this process, did you use vision boards and things? Like, obviously, you saying you started with $47, but you've got such a huge mission out to the world. How did you make that happen? How did you grow that business with so little resources, for example?
I mean, there's a whole thing that we did to grow that. I mean, what I first did, you guys, is and I talked to a lot of business entrepreneurs, like women in business, because I love women in business. I mean, obviously it's powerful, but I find that a lot of women want to do it alone, or they don't want to give up percentage of the profits or their business. So it's either control or profits or whatnot. And I came from the mindset that I'm happy to share profits. I just want to go far and fast. And I wanted to be yoked with someone who thought different than me, had different skill sets than me. And so I used meditation to call in my business partner. And I've now hired experts, and I'm willing to share profitability. I'm willing to pay higher because I know where I want to go. And I do think that's made a difference. So I do want to say that with all of it. But I mean, there's so many different formulas, but I honestly was hiring experts and giving them skin in the game, as well as, you got to away something free, not selling out your integrity at the early stages, because at the early stages, I wasn't making a lot. And, I had a lot of people be like, hey, will you mail for this? When I say mail, it's like an email to promoting something. It's doing really well. You're going to make money on it. And I knew it wasn't something I really believed in. And so I would say no. And that holding on to that integrity and playing the long game has paid off tremendously for me in business.
Yeah, and I think for me, what I noticed as well is it just feels, if it doesn't feel right, it's out of alignment. So
Yeah,
you
it's
should
just
only
yeah.
Exactly. If it's not in alignment with your brand, and what you believe in, your values. What about the foods then? Let's talk about those, because you were saying you did a huge amount of research into how what you were eating was really affecting your brain, the brain fog, the depression. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah. That are really powerful in general for most of humanity. And I have to say, there are some superfoods that there are outliers of people that probably shouldn't have them. So always taking that into mind. But for the most part, for me, I would just started to study, what foods anciently. So, because I believe that a lot of this stuff that we think we're learning now has already been here before. It was anciently given, back in Egyptian times. I mean, in Africa, the Mayans, the Aztecs, I mean, they had so much wisdom. And so I started really uncovering, like, what were they eating? What were they doing? And obviously I've created this deep love for cacao, like raw ceremonial grade cacao, because it is high in antioxidants. It contains a chemical called anandamide, which only 2 foods in the world do, which creates this feeling of love, the love vibration. And what we do know is that the love feeling, that feeling of unconditional love, is actually the fundamental feeling for manifesting anything. It's the heart coherence. So then I started getting like, wow, so there's something to cacao. It was used as a currency over, coin at the time, because it is the brain opener. It is a cellular opener. It opens your heart, and it's full of superfoods. So, I mean, all these antioxidants and magnesium, all these different chemicals that are so for you. So then I was like, okay, playing with that. And then I would find different superfoods in India and around the world, and how can I infuse them all together to create an elixir that you can drink that's actually pleasurable, but give you such a big bang for your buck and also for your time, right? So that's just been something I've been super fast around. So there's a lot of superfoods, but I like say cacao, turmeric, ginger. Those are some of the core easy ones that we can get that are so powerful and potent. How they're cultivated does matter. If they're organically grown, ceremonial grade, and just regular raw cacao. Obviously, cacao over cocoa powder is tremendously better, 300 times better. So I don't even bother with cocoa. But yeah, so those are just some. Coconut oil is really great as well, like a really good coconut oil. These are things that that I make sure I get every single day.
Yeah, I was looking at one of your reels actually around what you eat in a day, and I think the thing that really struck me was how much you nourish your body and come from a place of kind of adding in stuff that's really going to nourish your mind and your body, as opposed to I feel like a lot now, there's too much conversation around how can I kind of stress my body out to make it more resilient all the time? Like, how can I do 20-hour fast? How can I do this? How can I, do you know what I mean? And it's
I
kind of
love
almost,
that you're saying it, girl. It's true. It's true.
isn't it? And it's still very masculine. And I feel like for me, it's all about embracing that femininity, right? And really showing ourselves that self-love and nourishing our bodies and being kind of grateful for things, but giving ourselves things rather than coming from this place of lack. Oh, I must go and do however many workouts a day and fast for 20 hours a day. And it's just throw myself in cold pools. And it's quite masculine still. I almost think we need to embrace the feminine a bit more. And that's what I loved about your videos.
My gosh, I love that you're claiming this. I hope you keep this, because I don't a lot of people claiming this, and it's true, because actually a lot of these tests or that we're seeing were done on men. They weren't done on women. And so we as women are taking on these tests that are testing men's hormones, like with these intermittent fasting, and it may not be good for your blood and your chemical makeup. And I love how you're saying it almost has this energy of how much can I stress the body, or how much can I make myself in an uncomfortable state for my goals, right? Versus eating because it's pleasurable. And for me, I found is that the more better I feel, my hormones are. Like, I get blood work and they're always like, you have the most balanced hormones of anyone. And I really think it's because I come from this philosophy of it's not that I always eat what people clean all the time. It's because I'm coming at food with energy of love. And I eat pleasurable food. Like it's pleasurable to me. And I really am a big advocate on that.
Yeah, I can see it, and your skin's glowing, and it really shows. And I think for people to hear this and embrace that so much more, because that's actually what ran me into trouble in my 20s when I was a corporate lawyer, like working really hard, just ignoring all this, staying up late, exercising at, like 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes when documents being typed. I ended up with PCOS, insulin resistance, endometriosis, then depression, all these things. And I've gone full circle like you, and it's about embracing, like, how can I add in more nourishing, healthy foods, self-love, meditation, exercise. And I just think that's probably one of the fastest ways to change your life, right?
Totally. I agree 100%.
Oh, amazing. It's so lovely to chat to you. Where can people find, because I know you have these amazing raw cacao products that people can buy. You have so many courses. I think you've published 7 books. Can you link to everything so people can come and find you?
I think is probably my website. You can link to the superfood company through that website and all programs, but at may.com. And then if you want to follow on social, which, I'm going to be starting a podcast soon, which I'm so excited about because I feel like I can really express who I am that social can't do. But if you like following on social, you can go to the Danette May on Facebook or Instagram.
Amazing. We'll link to all of that in the show notes. It's been so lovely to chat to you, Danette. Thank you so much for coming on.